Welcome back to EtherLink AI Insights. I'm Alex, and today we're tackling something that keeps European enterprise leaders up at night. How to actually be ready for Agentic AI and EU AI Act compliance by 2026. Sam, we've got less than 2 years to figure this out, and the stakes are enormous.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating is the timing here. We're not just looking at regulatory deadlines. We're looking at a fundamental shift in what AI can do autonomously. By 2026, Agentic AI moves from interesting pilot project to business-critical infrastructure. Most enterprises aren't ready for that conversation yet.
Let's start with the elephant in the room, the EU AI Act enforcement. August 2nd, 2026. That's the date. But there's this interesting tension you mention in the title about AI lead architect and fractional consultancy. Why are we seeing this rise of fractional models instead of enterprises just hiring full-time chief AI officers?
Cost is the obvious answer, but it's deeper than that. A full-time chief AI officer in Western Europe runs you $180,000 to $320,000 annually, plus benefits, infrastructure, and hiring overhead. But here's the real insight. Most organizations don't actually need that person full-time until they reach what we'd call Stage 3 maturity, where AI is operationalized and generating revenue. Stages 1 and 2, which is where most European enterprises still are, benefit far more from fractional architecture.
So fractional AI lead architects are basically delivering the same expertise, governance design, tech roadmaps, vendor selection, but at 30 to 50% of the cost. McKinsey data shows 62% of European enterprises now prefer that model, especially in regulated sectors. Why does fractional work better for compliance-heavy industries?
Because they're not beholden to legacy IT politics. A fractional architect comes in, spots where your governance framework conflicts with EU AI Act requirements, and can call that out without worrying about stepping on the toes of permanent executives who built the old system. They're external enough to be credible challengers, but embedded enough to understand your business context. That's the sweet spot for navigating compliance.
That makes sense. Now let's talk about what these architects are actually preparing enterprises for. You mentioned Agentic AI as a production utility by 2026. That's a big jump from where we are now with chatbots. What are we really talking about here?
Think about the difference between a car with cruise control and a self-driving car. ChatGPT is cruise control. You activate it for specific tasks, you're still steering. Agentic AI is autonomous. It takes a business objective, breaks it into steps, executes those steps, makes decisions within guardrails, and completes workflows without asking for help. Forrester found 45% of European enterprises are already piloting this stuff.
And the ROI numbers are wild. 3 to 5 times return within 18 months? Walk us through some concrete examples. What does this actually look like in practice?
Financial planning is a big one. Traditional FP&A teams spend weeks gathering data, building models, writing reports. An agentic system does that overnight, analyzes historical data, models scenarios, generates narrative reports. No human touch. In supply chain, autonomous agents monitor inventory, predict demand, negotiate with suppliers. You're cutting manual planning by 70%. And in software development, agents write code, test it, deploy it, shrinking delivery cycles by 40 to 50%. These aren't theoretical gains.
Those are incredible efficiency wins. But here's what I imagine keeps compliance officers awake: autonomous agents making business decisions without human review. How does the EU AI Act actually govern this? Because if an agent makes a decision that violates GDPR or discriminates, who's liable?
That's exactly why AI readiness scans and governance maturity assessments exist. The EU AI Act doesn't ban autonomous agents, but it requires transparency, human oversight mechanisms, and continuous monitoring. You need to audit what agents are doing, log their decisions, have escalation paths for high-risk situations. That's governance infrastructure most European enterprises haven't built yet. Gartner's data shows 68% lack formal AI governance frameworks entirely.
So the fractional AI lead architect's job is essentially to help close that gap before 2026. They're not just advising on technology, they're building the governance muscle. What does that actually look like month to month?
It's typically 10 to 20 hours weekly. You've got quarterly strategy sprints where you map out where AI fits in your business model and what compliance risks exist. Monthly governance reviews. You're auditing pilot projects, checking they align with emerging EU AI Act regulations, coaching teams on risk management. Then ad hoc technical deep dives when you're evaluating vendors or designing specific AI systems. It's hands-on, not parachute consulting.
I like that distinction. You're building accountability without adding permanent headcount. But let's push back on this a bit. What about continuity? If you're working with a fractional architect part-time, what happens when they're focused on another client's crisis?
Fair question. The best fractional models include deep knowledge transfer. You're not just getting advice, you're building capability in your internal team. The architect documents everything, runs workshops, creates playbooks so your people can execute independently. When they step back, you're left with a stronger team and clear governance structures. It's not permanent dependency. It's scaffolding that comes down once you're stable.
Okay, so here's the practical timeline. We're in late 2024, heading into 2025. An enterprise leader listening is thinking, do I really need to invest in an AI lead architect right now? What would you say? What?
Start immediately. Not panic immediately, but strategically. Run an AI readiness scan in the next quarter. You need to understand where you stand on governance maturity, what compliance gaps exist, and which agentic AI opportunities align with your business. Then either engage a fractional architect to guide that transformation or invest in building that capability internally. But waiting until mid-2026 puts you in reactive mode, scrambling to meet enforcement deadlines instead of building sustainable AI practices.
So the readiness scan is the diagnostic step. You find out what's broken. Then you decide whether to fix it with fractional guidance or permanent hires based on your maturity goals. What's the biggest governance gap you typically see in European enterprises right now?
Honestly, most don't have documented AI policies at all. They're running pilots in silos, one team playing with LLMs for customer service, another exploring code generation with no central governance. There's no audit trail, no risk assessment framework, no escalation procedures. They're also wildly underestimating the organizational change management required. Technology is maybe 20% of the challenge. The other 80% is getting your teams, your culture, your processes aligned around responsible AI.
That's the critical insight right there. It's not a technology problem. It's an organizational design problem. And that's where the fractional architect adds real value. They've seen this across multiple enterprises. They know what patterns work. Let me ask, for an enterprise that decides to invest in a fractional AI lead architect, what should they expect the first 90 days to look like?
Days 130. Discovery and assessment. You're meeting stakeholders across functions, auditing existing AI initiatives, understanding business priorities and regulatory constraints. You're building a shared understanding of where AI matters most. Days 30-60. Governance framework design. You're drafting policies, defining roles and responsibilities, outlining how agentic AI specifically fits into your compliance obligations. Days 60-90. Roadmap and team alignment. You're presenting findings to leadership, getting buy-in on phased investments, identifying which quick wins can build momentum and which initiatives require deeper transformation.
That's actionable. And I imagine by the end of 90 days, the enterprise has a clear picture of their maturity level and what moving to stage 2 or stage 3 actually requires. Before we wrap, let's zoom out. What does successful AI enterprise readiness look like by mid-2026 when EU AI Act enforcement is in full swing?
You have formal governance structures in place. You're auditing AI systems regularly. You've got clear escalation procedures. You document decisions. Your teams understand AI risks and can spot compliance issues. You're running agentic AI pilots with proper oversight, and you're generating measurable ROI from those pilots. Most importantly, you've embedded AI thinking into how your organization operates. It's not an innovation silo anymore. It's integrated into business as usual. That's the bar.
That's the vision. And fractional AI lead architects are the accelerators getting enterprises there without blowing their budgets or overloading their organizations. Sam, thanks for digging into this. To our listeners, this conversation only scratches the surface. The full article on AI-led architect and fractional consultancy, along with frameworks for assessing your own governance maturity and detailed use cases for agentic AI adoption, is on EtherLink AI. Head there for the complete analysis.
And if you're in the assessment phase, start thinking about which business processes would benefit most from autonomous AI agents. That'll shape your readiness roadmap. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Sam. You've been listening to EtherLink AI Insights. We'll be back next week with more on enterprise AI strategy. See you then.